Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with musician, record producer, and educator Jeff Rupert of the Flying Horse Big Band. As the director of jazz studies at the University of Central Florida, he leads a youth-oriented, student-filled Flying Horse Big Band. And their latest 2018 CD is called The Bat Swings, and it is full of 1960s superhero songs. Jeff has been a featured soloist on dozens of recordings with artists like Maynard Ferguson, Sam Rivers, Mel Tormé, Diane, Schuur, and the great Benny Carter. And these days he stays quite busy with playing, recording, and teaching. He has many stories to impart, so please get to know him and dig this interview, my friends.
Okay, I think we're golden now. Jeff, hey, thanks for taking a minute out to talk to me about your life in music and the Flying Horse Big Band. I appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure.
Talk to me about your latest album. There's just such a level of energy and high energy that goes into it. How much fun was this album to make?
Oh, it was a lot of fun. There's a little bit of an age disconnect because all the players on that album are younger and never saw all this Batman stuff on TV. The Batman they grew up with was it Val Kilmer or Michael Keaton? I'm not sure who the guys were, but the long and short of it is they were used to a much more serious Batman than me, being a child of the 60s, was used to the Adam West and Burt Ward Batman. But regardless, the kids totally were into it. The energy was great. The vibe was great. And the kids had a lot of fun recording. I say kids, they're all young adults. They're in their early 20s. But it was a blast. And it was also fun to involve great writers like Mike Mossman and Mark Taylor and Harry Allen, who all got it right away and were like, this will be a lot of fun. This is going to be great.
Yeah, and it seems like that's kind of a theme. You kind of harken back to a previous day of, superheroes and TV. And is there a certain amount of nostalgia that you're going for with these albums and these cuts?
Well, in this album, yeah, we were really trying to interpret that music and that whole campy kind of vibe of that 60s show. But yet the music is serious in that the preparation and the arrangements are great. The soloing is really strong. Where it really kind of hit me, Joe, was when our graphics guy was doing the album artwork. It was really kind of cheesy and campy. And I was like, I think it's too much. Maybe we should back it off. But he's like, no, it has to be that. It's Batman. And I realized he was right. I mean, he was really kind of capturing the vibe of that 60s show. And it's like he was correct in that it would have been going half speed, if you will, if we didn't do the artwork to the same effect that the music was. And that was this kind of campy vibe.
Without a doubt. So talk to me about the band. How did the band come together? When did they come together? And just kind of a history.
The Flying Horse Big Band is one of 6 jazz ensembles we have at the University of Central Florida. It's our top band. The Bat Swings is the 9th release for Flying Horse Records, which is the label we started at the school. And that band has been together. This iteration of the band is just this year. Every year we get new members. Some guys graduate, new guys come in, and so this is just one iteration of the band that we've had. But the nice thing is we rehearse 3-4 times a week, and then by the end of the year, the band is really roaring. And one of the things that's so important, I think, in good art music is to have a band sound. In other words, I could always hire pros and get together and do a one-off of a record, and the musicianship would be, as you could surmise, at a high level. But when you have a working group together, you really kind of develop a band sound. And a lot of the music I even wrote or had written around the students that are in the band to kind of show off their prowess as musicians, where they were at, so to speak.
So talk to me about how you got into music. How did you fall in love with jazz? Kind of what's your trajectory?
I grew up, we had 2 homes between Washington, D.C. and New York City, and my mom's family were classical violinists. My mom was not a professional musician. My dad was a jazz fan. I mean, not like, an avid jazz fan, but just like jazz. But at any rate, at 10 years old, I remember listening to, in my dad's car, this guy, Felix Grant. He was a DJ in Washington, D.C. And I used to listen to that station coming home with my mom and dad. and Felix Grant would play the Oscar Peterson trio, Stan Getz, a lot of those kind of classic artists between the 40s and the 60s, and I was hooked from the age of 10, and never looked back.
Right on. So talk to me about shows that you've seen that have really influenced you. I mean, you obviously had a backbone in hearing this on the radio, but there's something about seeing shows live. What have you seen that's really moved you?
The very first big band I ever saw live was the Count Basie Band, and they started off with All of Me, which is really quiet. It's like kind of a shtick, and I didn't know it. I was only 10, but Basie and rhythm section would be playing All of Me really quiet, and I think it's about the 32nd bar of the tune. The whole horn section comes in really powerful. And I remember I hid under my chair, and I was like, oh my gosh, it was so loud, and it stunned me. Fast forward 30 years, I was subbing in the Basie Band, and it was like one of the first times I ever got nervous playing, and I was backstage warming up, and one of the trombone players, Bill Hughes, came up to me. He goes, hey man, welcome to the band. I said, thanks, I'm a little nervous. This is the first band I heard when I was a kid. And he said, what year was that? I said, well, I was 10, so it would have been 1974. He said, oh, I was on the band then. Welcome back. I just kind of cracked up. But that was the first show. And then, another one I remember about the same time. There was three. There's that one. And then I saw Buddy Rich's band. And I really liked that band. And what struck me right away is that, wow, all these bands have different personalities. And it was later on that I realized that the Basie Band's personality, of course, was kind of personified Basie's personality. Laid back, refined. And Buddy Rich's band definitely modeled his persona. Very intense, upbeat, aggressive. And so I think I kind of keyed on to that as a young kid. And then the other show I remember seeing that same year was I went and saw David Fathead Newman at Blues Alley. And that was a life changer because Fathead was just so soulful and swinging. And then on top of it, I mean, I was like, 10, and I'm going up to David Fathead Newman saying, hi, Mr. Newman, I'm Jeff Rupert. I just got my first saxophone. I'm learning how to play it. And when I left, at the end of the night, or the end of the set, he's like, hey, Jeff, good luck with your saxophone. Hope to see you around. And that set the stage for the way jazz musicians have treated me my whole life. I mean, I worked with Benny Carter when he was 87, and Frank West was on the band, Virgil Jones. And I've learned that jazz musicians really don't care how old or young you are or anything about you. It's just about, do you really love music? And that has a huge effect on me just as far as how I treat other people.
That's beautiful. That's a great story, man. Yeah, and as far as I'm concerned, from what I've seen and heard from jazz musicians over the 7 years that I've done this, you hit it, you said it in a way that I've never heard before. Because it is. It doesn't matter if you're somebody that's covering jazz or playing jazz. If you love it, you feel it, and people know it. That's just all there is to it.
It really is that way. It's kind of a neat arena. Yeah,
without a doubt. So let me ask you very simply, why do you love jazz?
Oh, I just always liked the rhythm of it. I remember from a kid, the rhythm is what got me. I mean, I heard great harmony. My mom, was playing a lot of Beethoven in the house, some Mozart, and then I liked, and I still like Ravel a lot, and Debussy. But I remember hearing the Jazz Messengers, or hearing Stan Getz, or hearing Oscar Peterson, and the rhythm just flipped me out. I have a 12-year-old son he just found this album, Oscar Peterson +1. It's with Clark Terry. And, it's the rhythm. He's freaking out over it too. And I think, as adults, we get kind of desensitized. We forget. But you remember when we were kids and if the music in your car didn't match the beat of the windshield wipers, it drove you crazy. And I think, we were all very sensitive rhythmically when we were kids. And so I remember hearing early jazz. I remember hearing, some of these Kansas City, 6 records that Basie made as a kid, and just the rhythm just blew me away. Still does. Really still does today.
Yeah. Well, you got a good pulse on the youth and the future of jazz. How well is jazz doing in America in 2018?
That's a valid question. Two parts to that. My colleague, my drummer in my quartet is Marty Morell. Marty's in his late 70s. He also teaches at the University of Central Florida with me. And he says, you know, Jeff, I've been told jazz is dying since I was a kid. And he's made a great career. He's technically retired from the financial, and he doesn't have to work, but he works all the time because he loves to. So to fast forward to now and your question, people, I hear all the time, oh, jazz is dying or jazz is in trouble, this or that. But, I'm working all the time. My friends are working all the time. And I think it's like any industry. If you're good, you're gonna work. And of course, there's more to jazz than just an industry. It is an art form. And what I'm really encouraged about regarding that is what's happening with kids. This year, I directed the Jazz Band of America through Music for All, the band met in Indianapolis. What it is they do a national search, some audition, and all the best kids who audition get in the band. Well, Joe, this band, this year I ran it, every single kid was a great improviser. 17 kids in a big band. Everyone could play a great solo. So the struggle for me was, how do we program a set where everybody gets to shine a little bit? 20 years ago, you'd be lucky if 2 kids could improvise in a band. So as far as jazz education, things are really growing. I think even if not every kid that's involved in it is going to make a living at it, there's so many people that appreciate jazz music. I see jazz crowds in some ways as actually growing because of jazz education.
I almost ask this question in a rhetorical way because I find the fact that it was even quoted as jazz is dead to be a very and almost funny thing because it thrives so much. I mean, there's so much education. There's so many people that are playing it. There's so much going on. I look in Kansas City, and Kansas City, since I started the show in 2011, has perpetually been in a renaissance. It used to be cats would leave here and go to the Mecca of New York or other cities, but anymore people are sticking around. Bobby Watson has a great program here. There's all kinds of talent, and I have never once in the history of doing this show, as much as I continue to study and get into it, have I seen any forms of near flatline with this art. All I ever hear and feel from not only the artist but the music that's coming out is that there's an evolutionary envelope that continues to get pushed, and the art form is always going to new places. And that, to me, is no indication that anything's dying.
No, it's not. It reminds me, as we've been talking about this, that it's kind of like, maybe it's a bad analogy, maybe it's a good one, but, a guy goes out and he goes to fish, he goes, oh, there's no fish. But then someone else is nailing fish, It's like, well, I guess you're just not looking in the right place because, if I want to go out in pretty much any city I know of and hear some music, I know I can find some guys playing some blues at least. And then we're not even talking about, the international scene. I played in Taiwan at the National Concert Hall there, and there's 3,000 people there. There's a huge hunger to learn about this music right now in China and Taiwan, really more in Taiwan than China. And Japan, of course, has been strong for a long time. And Europe the jazz scene continues to thrive. So I think it's laughable to even question it. And I know you weren't questioning that because you did say it was a rhetorical question, but I think it's for the people that, it's like fishing, I guess. If you know what you're doing, you're going to find some fish. If you know what jazz is about, it's not dead. That there's a lot going on. So there's a lot going on, not only artistically, but also entertainment-wise. There's great acts out that are artistically minded, but also bring big crowds. Someone like Diane, for example, or then there's young singers. A singer I've worked with now named Veronica Swift, who's just tearing the roof off the house as a bebop singer, and she's 23, and she's working all the time. So, yeah, there's a lot of great things happening on the horizon.
The one thing, too, that I noticed about the Flying Horse Big Band is that you're charting pretty well. How did it feel to see success with these CDs and releases in the band overall?
As an educator, what we're trying to do is we aim for excellence, but also relevance. So we've been very gratified. The charting has been great. And some might say that charting is an extrinsic value, but it also, for the university and that, brings a tangible for the administration to chew on that says, wow, look at this college jazz band doing this. And so it's been really helpful for our administration who are supportive of the arts, but to have a stronger grasp or something tangible to grab onto to present to the Board of Trustees, for example, that, hey, look what's happening in the music area. Because they do that with football. They do that with, college sports. So when it's quantified in this way, it's really helped out quite a bit. For the students, it's actually funny because the students, I don't think they know how to process it. They see it and they're like, really? And they just don't get it. They love it, but they just don't understand it. And I've had a couple colleagues, Richard Drexler told the students once, he goes, hey, I didn't record. He's on over 200 albums. He goes, I think the first album that ever charted was one that the jazz professors did. So the students know it's valuable, but we're just, I'm really just trying to give them, they help run the record company, so we're trying to give them an understanding of the ancillary revenue streams in music. And they also see that charting has its benefits if it doesn't directly connect into record sales. It actually, in a bigger arc, connects to artist recognition, brand recognition, things of that nature. So it's been great as a tool for teaching. And artistically, it's really pleasing as well, of course.
Let me ask you this. Everyone has a perception of what this band is. What do you think this band is? Tell me who this band is.
Oh, this band is a young band of swinging kids. These guys all want to play. They swing with authority, and they want to play great solos, and they want to be in a jazz band and solo within a group environment. There's a great Rudyard Kipling line from the Second Jungle Book that I think epitomizes what the band is about. And it's short. If I remember it, it goes, and this is the law of the jungle. It's as old and true as the sky, and the wolf that keeps it will prosper, and the wolf that breaks it will die. Like the creeper that girdles the tree trunk, this law runs forward and back. For the strength of the pack is the wolf, and the strength of the wolf is the pack. And the idea is that, to me, jazz music, it's about being an individual within a group setting. And that's the way the band feels. The Flying Horse Big Band is all about being a team, but then you get your moment to be yourself and show your style. And really, I think what energizes me is that's not only is that jazz, that's being an American. That's what America is about.
I think that's a great way to wrap everything up. It's a great description of the band. And Jeff, thank you for taking a minute out to talk to me about the Flying Horse Big Band, the new album, and just kind of opening up about jazz. I appreciate it.
I can't thank you enough for the interest, Joe. I really appreciate it. And we actually just recorded our next album. It's in the can, and it'll be coming out probably in the next 6 months, so we'll make sure you get a copy.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Florida, Kansas City, and spots all over the globe, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Jeff for his time, his music, and the stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.